COVID hospitalizations, that is being driven by the Delta variant. And so, yes, we are seeing Omicron in Florida and really all throughout the country. Fortunately, Omicron is not shown to produce the same level of hospitalizations as the Delta variant did. Now, we'll see if that changes, but the numbers of South Africa, I thought by and large were very encouraging and didn't justify the hysteria that you saw by a lot of folks in corporate media. At the end of the day in Florida, Floridians know we will not let anybody lock them down. We will not let anyone take their jobs. We will not let anyone ruin their businesses, and we will not let anyone close their schools. So people are going to be able to live life. They're going to be able to make their own decisions. I cannot believe that something that started with 15 days to slow the spread, now almost 2 years later, you're seeing lockdowns and closures. There are places, Maria, some of these universities, they force everyone to be vaccinated. They force them to wear masks, and they still lock down because you have these cases going up. And so in Florida, people are going to be able to make those decisions. We do put a lot of emphasis, unlike most states and certainly unlike the Biden administration, on early treatment when people do get infected. And it's not just unvaccinated like they like to say. Our monoclonal antibody clinics that we set up across the state, the majority of people that go to those are fully vaccinated, high-risk people. And so since we've rolled out our monoclonal antibody clinics, we've had one of the lowest hospitalization rates in the country. So we're going to continue focusing on early treatment, and we're going to continue protecting people's individual choices and freedoms.
Governor, a federal judge, an appeals court on Friday allowed President Biden's vaccine mandate for private employers to take effect as New York and California are reimposing these mask mandates. It looks like this is going to the Supreme Court. You recently talked about that monoclonal treatment from AstraZeneca, right?
Yeah, well, first of all, on the OSHA mandate, I thought it was a terrible decision. Now, this is just a 3-judge panel. I thought the whole circuit in the 6 would certainly have struck this down. I do think we're going to get positive relief from the U.S. Supreme Court on that. But, Maria, what we did in Florida is we didn't leave it to chance. We passed substantive protections in a special session for Floridians so that they are able to have generous ability to opt out of these types of mandates. And so we feel like we've done what we needed to do to protect our employees. I think it's important from a legal and constitutional matter that something like the OSHA mandate not be allowed to stand. They reached back decades, found some statute, and are using that to force vaccinations. That's never been done in the history of our country. And so I think it's a massive expansion of federal power that goes beyond the Constitution. So we absolutely need to win that case at the Supreme Court. And yes, we had another monoclonal. This is more for preventative for very high-risk people. You take it, and then you have about 6 months of really good protection. And we should be talking about all this stuff. All you hear is the same stuff about masking and lockdowns. We should be talking more about early treatment. Fortunately, in Florida, we are. But that has been a huge problem for the last year when we've had available treatments, and they've not been touted by the powers that be.
Yeah, I mean, Governor, we're not even sure what fully vaccinated means anymore. The other day, Dr. Fauci said, we could be that fully vaccinated means 3 shots, which is 2 shots for the vaccination and then 1 booster shot. Have you gotten the booster?
So I've done whatever I did, the normal shot, and that at the end of the day is people's individual decisions about what they want to do. But these boosters, in terms, now Florida, we ban vaccine passports. We won't let them fire you, even private businesses, over this because we don't think that's appropriate. But one of the reasons why we took those steps is because we knew the definition of vaccination would be a shifting target. And I predicted this a month and a half ago, and people said that I was wrong. And now we're starting to see it come to fruition. So there's going to be people who've done maybe 2 Pfizer shots who are not doing booster, and they could be considered in certain parts of the country to be unvaccinated and then denied the ability to participate in society like everybody else. It's gone way, way too far, and that is a decision that people should make for themselves, but they should not have their rights, freedoms, or liberties restricted based on these boosters.
Governor, I want to talk about the incredible economic performance that you are overseeing in Florida. You just recently did your budget. You were an attorney in the U.S. Navy, and you know all about what has happened in terms of jobs in this country because of these mandates. We are losing first responders. Tell me about the 50,000 job opportunities that you've talked about within your budget. You just recently passed your budget, and you're obviously a smaller budget than New York, but you've got much more success at the end of the day. Walk us through your budget.
Well, first of all, November job report nationally, about 200,000 jobs nationwide. In Florida alone in November, we did over 50,000 new jobs created in Florida. So that's over 25% of the total job output just in one state. My budget is about $99.7 billion. I mean, you mentioned New York. New York's budget is like $230 billion. And I think most people that come here would say we have better roads, infrastructure, services. Our K-12 schools perform higher. We have the #1 rated public university system in the country. And we do all that with no state income tax, and in fact have the lowest per capita tax burden in the country. And we have over $15 billion in surplus revenue. I mean, just think about what Washington's doing by printing trillions and trillions. We have over 15% of the amount of money we're spending in budget reserves. And so that is something that's setting up Florida for the long haul. Yes, we have less taxes, and that's part of the reason people have been drawn here. But I think, Maria, since COVID, people know in Florida their freedoms are going to be respected. People know they can invest here and not have their businesses shut down. People know that they're going to be able to get jobs here and not potentially be forced out based on mandates. And so I think the fact that we've really stood for freedom, in addition to having good tax and spend policies, has really caused people to want to come work in Florida. And we're producing more jobs per capita than other states. But we have hundreds of thousands of job openings because the economy, is performing well.
Governor, before you go, we're about to talk with President Trump. We don't know if he's going to definitely run in 2024. Will you be running in 2024?
I just filed for re-election last month in the state of Florida for governor. So if people want to support that, go to rondesantis.com. We think it's going to be in an important race. And so that's been my focus. I got 22.5 million people, Maria, and on every given day in this season until probably May, we probably have 25 million people in this state with the tourists and the snowbirds. So we've got our hands full, and we're looking forward to a successful re-election next year.
Well, we are just back from Florida, and I could feel the energy in the air. Congrats to you. Good to see you, sir. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Governor Ron DeSantis joining us. Quick break from Tallahassee to Palm Beach. We're taking you to President Trump's home in Florida, the Mar-a-Lago Estate and Club. 45 is coming up on vaccines, China, and election 2024. He's next. Welcome back. The Omicron variant is proving to be much harder to pin down than expected. Even if it is less virulent and less sickening, for many it is playing out with mild flu-like symptoms. The virus that likely originated in a Wuhan, China virology lab has sickened millions across the world and has killed more than 800,000 Americans in the last year and a half. And yet, President Biden refuses to press Chinese President Xi Jinping about its origins and how it leaked from that lab. We traveled to Palm Beach, Florida this weekend to catch up with President Trump, and I asked him about the virus.
I think the origins are so obvious. They came out of the Wuhan lab, and I think if anybody thinks anything differently, they're just kidding themselves. So you can ask, China has to pay. They have to do something. They have to pay reparations. And China doesn't have the money to pay those reparations. I believe that worldwide, I'm not just talking United States, worldwide, $60 trillion of damage. 60 trillion. China doesn't have $60 trillion. But they have to do something to make up for what they've done. What they've done to the world is so horrible. It's been horrible all over the world. And it doesn't stop. Remember, Biden was going to do a wonderful job on COVID, right? He was going to do a wonderful job. He's done a horrible job. Look at what's going on. Today, we set a record on cases, a record. This was supposed to be away. This would have been gone. And one of the reasons people don't take the vaccine is they don't trust Biden. If you remember, they did the pause on Johnson & Johnson. That was a very bad thing to do. That sounded so bad. You understand? Because there are people who don't know about Johnson & Johnson. They did the pause on Johnson & Johnson. And even during the debates, I will never take the vaccine if Trump produces it. And then I produced it in 9 months, less than 9 months, and it was supposed to take 5 to 12 years. I did it in 9 months. And the first one to get it, he got it in early December. And then even then, he made a speech where, I think it was his opening, he said that, like, he came up with a vaccine. This guy got the vaccine during my administration. They are big disinformation people.
Would you have boycotted the 2022 China Olympics?
No, because I watched Jimmy Carter do it and it was terrible. It was terrible. It hurts the athletes. There are much more powerful things we can do than that. Much, much more powerful things. That's not a powerful thing. It almost makes us look like, I don't know, sore losers. We're doing so badly. Maria, our country is no longer respected. No, I wouldn't do that. I'd like to see our great athletes go over and win every single medal. When this was done by Jimmy Carter, I remember it so well. The athletes were devastated. They were hurt so badly. No, I'd like to see the United States go over, which I think they will, and win all the gold medals and win the silver and the bronze and do great.
Do you think that China will take over the Bagram Air Base? Were you going to close Bagram?
No, I was never. So there were 6 of them. I was going to bomb 5 and keep Bagram. But the reason I was going to keep it wasn't for Afghanistan. It was because of China. It's 1 hour away from where they make their nuclear weapons. It has the largest runways, the most powerful runways, made for heavy. They're very powerful, thick. Like, in some cases, 8 feet of concrete. Nobody ever heard of anything like that. We spent billions of dollars building it years ago, long before me. And it's right next to China. And it's right next to where they make their nuclear weapons. And we gave it up in the dark of night. We left the lights on. And we did leave the dogs, by the way. You know, people say, oh, remember they said, oh, well, we didn't really. They left the dogs. And the Taliban doesn't like dogs. So you can imagine what happened. But
makes me think of Fauci. Anthony Fauci misled the Senate when he said that the NIH did not fund the gain-of-function research. Should you have fired Fauci?
So a lot of people ask me that question, and I did it right. Because if you do fire him, you're going to have a firestorm on the left again, as usual. And I didn't listen to him. If you think about it, he wanted to keep our country open to China, and I closed it. He wanted to keep our country open to Europe, and I closed it. He talked about masks being no good. Well, I'm not a huge mask believer, but I think they have some purpose. And now he's a radical masker. I mean, everything he's done, he's a great promoter, he's a bad pitcher. He was telling me what a great athlete he was. I said, you can't throw a baseball 15 feet. I never saw it. That was, other than President Obama, it may be the worst throw I've ever seen to home plate. No, I think I did the right thing because we would have had a firestorm. Less of a firestorm now if he was fired, because he's been wrong so often. But if you think of it, he wanted to keep our country open to China, Europe, and all these places, and I didn't do it.
Well, right after this, the president takes on Build Back Better, the border crisis, and speculation of a 2024 rematch between President Trump and Hillary Clinton. More of my exclusive interview coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. The congressional midterm elections now just 11 months away, and many lawmaker hopefuls have been meeting with President Donald Trump in hopes of getting his endorsement. I asked President Trump why he's been so active in endorsing candidates and whether D.C. outsiders are resonating. He began by scrutinizing current GOP Senate leadership.
Look, Mitch McConnell's a disaster. The Republicans have to get a new leader. Mitch McConnell allowed this to happen. The infrastructure bill, I call it infrastructure, not infrastructure. It's only 9% infrastructure. So that means you take 90%, 91% of the money that we're raising is going to be thrown out the window in order to get 9% infrastructure. There was no way that that should have been passed. It should have been 100% for infrastructure. So what's happening is we had a thing called the debt ceiling. And he could have used that to win everything, and he chose not to. And we have a bigger problem because they have a so-called voting rights bill, which is a voting rights for Democrats, because Republicans will never be elected again if that happens, if that passes.
Let me ask you about all of these people that you've been supporting recently. We're entering the election year, the primaries in March. You've already endorsed several candidates for re-election. What are you looking for? Let's go through some of these contests that are toss-ups. Senator Mark Kelly in Arizona, Senator Raphael Warnock, Georgia, Catherine Cortez Masto, Nevada, Maggie Hassan, New Hampshire. What are your
They're
thoughts?
a disaster. They're for open borders. They're for defunding the police. They're for crime. In other words, they're for crime. They're for taking away your Second Amendment. So they want to take away your police and then take away your right to protect yourself. When you think of it, right? These people are a disaster, and they should all lose. And we have some great candidates. And sometimes I'm going a little outside of the box with some, because we have candidates that are not strong. They're rhinos, and they're not strong. They're Mitch McConnell type guys, and he's a disaster. So we need tougher people. We need people that are going to be able to win for our country. Not win for me, by the way, win for our country. And we have some great candidates.
The other day, Hillary Clinton said that if you win again, it is the end of democracy. Will this be a rematch?
Oh, I have no idea. I hope so. I mean, I'd like that. But look, the woman's crooked as can be. She cheated on the election. They spied on my campaign. Remember I put out that little statement, they're spying on my campaign, and all hell broke out. You know why it broke out? Because they knew I was right. They knew I was right. And all of these things that happened, and we caught them, let's see what happens now. Let's see what happens to Hunter. Let's see what happens to all of them.
Just today, he called Kamala Harris president again.
Oh.
But do you think someone else is directing him?
Well, I never called Mike Pence president. I'll tell you, I can't imagine what's going on. It's hard to believe.
Who's running the country?
Well, think of it. It was so obvious in this case because 450,000, he was incensed. He was very upset by that question asked by a very good reporter, actually. But he was very angry at that question. Like, how dare you? What a stupid question. Of course, the next morning, he was saying how, yeah, this is something that we think is excellent. That really means, in the truest sense, that he is not running the country. Because there's no way you go from indignation to, oh, that's wonderful. And I hope you had a good interview.
What do you think the strategy is around the border? 2 million people apprehended this year, 600,000 others getting away. The amount of illicit narcotics coming in is incredible. Fentanyl, we had 100,000 overdoses just in the last year, largely due to fentanyl.
Hundreds of thousands, 100,000, but hundreds of thousands of people are dying. You know, if this were a war, and if we lost 200,000-300,000, because I think that's the real number with drugs, and much of it's coming through the southern border, there's never been a war that anybody lost numbers like this. We're losing hundreds of thousands of people a year to drugs. We had it at a level that they haven't seen in years because they couldn't get in. And when we have an open border, we're not just talking about the people, as we said. We're talking about the drugs that are coming in, the human trafficking, mostly in women. They traffic in women, children to a much lesser extent, but they traffic in women. And what they do, they'll put 6 women in the trunk of a car. I mean, what they do, these are animals. And we had it really largely stopped. It would have been just about stopped. And then these people got into office and they destroyed it. They're destroying our country.
Coming up, crystal chandeliers, golden luxury. This is the room President Trump hosted Xi Jinping in Mar-a-Lago just 2 months into the new president's term in 2017. Coming up, 45 on China, Russia, and the national security threats to America right now. Okay, let's talk. Welcome back. At the start of President Trump's term in 2017, much of the media and the political establishment were focused on Russia. Most were accusing him of a false, made-up narrative of colluding with Vladimir Putin to steal an election. And yet, 2 months into his presidency, Trump chose to invite Chinese President Xi Jinping to a luxurious weekend at Mar-a-Lago. While dining in a crystal chandeliered setting, Trump dropped the news to Xi Jinping that the U.S. had just launched strikes against Syria. Now, 4 years later, and after much intellectual property theft, spy and surveillance, invading of other countries, and downright genocide in its Xinjiang region, national security officials admit what Trump knew very well. It is the Chinese Communist Party that represents the biggest threat to America and her democracy.
Our country has never been so low. Our country has never been so disrespected as it is right now by China, Russia, North Korea, and everybody else, Iran. There's never been a time like this. The Afghan withdrawal, I want to withdraw more than anybody, and I was doing it beautifully with power and strength. The way he just came in and surrendered, I think when China, when Russia, when these people are looking at what happened, on that, I think it's the lowest point. I think it's the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to our country.
The Chinese Communist Party is also mocking us. They were using fake military jets, United States military jets, for target practice recently. The national security issues are huge. You knew that China was a real threat. Yeah. I know that you hosted Xi Jinping here at Mar-a-Lago just a few months into your presidency. You served him dessert chocolate cake. You said it was the best chocolate cake he had had. And during that dessert, you dropped the news that the U.S. had just launched 50 strikes against Syria. How did you know China was the threat, really, the important threat to focus on?
Well, not only China, but China from an economic standpoint is massive. Russia's not massive from that standpoint, but they're a military power. And China's a great military power. But China economically has been ripping us off for many years. I've been talking about it for a long time. $500 billion a year. And I'm the first one. We were taking in billions, tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars of money from China. And I was giving a lot of it to the farmers, manufacturers. Our farmers are rich now because of the deal I made with China. But once COVID came along, or the China virus, as I call it, because it's a much more accurate term, once that came along, you know, I had a great relationship with President Xi. I really believe he liked me, and I liked him. I had a great relationship.
He's a killer.
He is a killer. But I had a great relationship with him. Once COVID came, it was a different story. Because they've really, not only this country, they've really destroyed the world, the whole world. If you look at what's going on, and Biden said, I will solve it. Well, he couldn't solve the H1N1, which was another very minor by comparison. That was a disaster. And everybody knew that, but he said he's going to solve it. Well, as you know, and everybody reports it, even the fake news sometimes, but there are more deaths this year than there were with me. And we have all of these vaccines, and we have all of these incredible therapeutics. They're not doing their job. They don't know what the hell they're doing. The mandates are killing our economy.
But Joe Biden still has not brought up the origins of COVID to Xi Jinping. They spoke 4 times this year. Why do you think that is?
Because he's afraid of them. And I think he's afraid of the fact that they gave billions of dollars to his son. And
so they have something on him.
Yeah, of course they do. And they gave billions of dollars. I asked friends of yours, the biggest people there are in terms of Wall Street, can you go into China and walk away with $1.5 billion? These are people that you interview once a month, okay? The real people on Wall Street, the smartest guys, the guys with the big companies that run the big companies, Wall Street firms. He said, nobody does that, nobody. The most sophisticated guy in Wall Street can't walk in and walk out in 10 minutes with $1.5 billion, walk out with it, and he gets fees on all of that money. Tens of millions of dollars.
Why do you think our adversaries are doing all of this now? I mean, you've got a buildup of troops at the Ukraine border.
None of this happened with me. You didn't have bombers flying over Taiwan.
Why are they
You
doing
didn't have
it
any threat of any meaningfulness in Ukraine. Now, before that, they took over a big section of Ukraine. You understand that under the Biden administration, they took over the Obama administration, and essentially, the two of them, they approved it. I think Biden was in charge. And under Obama's administration, they took over a very big part of Ukraine, as you know, where they have the submarines, where the Russians now have their submarines. It's hard to believe, actually. You know, people
do they see weakness?
Oh, the other countries? They've never seen it. They've never, well, even the ones that are our friends have taken advantage of us on trade. Look, the European Union is almost as bad on trade as China is. I say that to people that say, oh, that, you know, everybody says European Union's so nice. They rip us off like, you know, a few others. We lost 187 billion when I was coming into office with the European Union. Now with China, it's over five. It was $507 billion. It's not sustainable. And what I did with the taxes and the tariffs on China, taking in hundreds of billions of dollars, we never took in 10 cents. And the funny thing is Biden used to argue against it, but they haven't taken the tariffs off. You know why? It's so much money. And not only that, companies were moving back into the United States. But now they stopped because they think he's going to take the tariffs off. And that's a shame.
If you were to run and win again, are you going to be better at your appointees? I mean, you've got Anthony Fauci, you had Jim Comey, you had Christopher Wray, all of these people on your team, and you didn't fire them. They were all against you.
Yeah, but I had great people too. I rebuilt the military. I got the largest tax cuts in history. I got the largest regulation cuts in history. I created the greatest economy in the world, Lighthizer and all my guys. We had great people, and we had some bad ones. I mean, Sessions was bad, and Amanda followed him, didn't want to be impeached. You know, a lot of them were fine, and then they're politicians. As an example, I had no real problem with Milley until he did the walk. And the radical left said it was a bad thing to do, and he apologized for it. And then when he said it's cheaper to leave the equipment in Afghanistan, I said, you gotta be kidding. I started to realize this guy's not too good. But he's a politician and he goes the way the wind is blowing. We had great people, but we had some bad ones, and so does every administration. You know, we appoint thousands and thousands of people. 10,000 people get appointed from the White House.
These were people in key positions, and you kept them on, well, and they were against you.
It's true. They were recommended, all of them, they were recommended by people. Now I know everybody. I know people in Washington that are so great. But when I got there, I was in Washington 17 days my entire life. I went there 17 times in my entire life, never stayed overnight. And all of a sudden I became president. And I had to rely on people. And some of the people, I will tell you who recommended them, but some of the people that were recommended, and some of the people you mentioned are not bad. But I'll tell you what, we had great people too. We had people that created the greatest economy in history. We had people that rebuilt the military. I rebuilt the entire military. I got rid of ISIS from Iraq and from Syria, 100% of the caliphate. Knocked out al-Baghdadi, Soleimani. We did things that nobody has ever done. Nobody's done what this administration has done. With that, I could have made some people some choices, but isn't that true with every president? You know, you could go back to Obama, you could go back to Reagan. You put people in, you think they're going to be good, they don't do the job. And then sometimes they do a better job.
My thanks to President Trump. We continue my interview with the president tomorrow morning. Join me on Mornings with Maria on Fox Business for more on President Trump's thoughts on cryptocurrency, the economy, and Mrs. Melania Trump's new NFT, non-fungible token. We will hear more exclusive tomorrow morning on Fox Business. Join us. Coming up, one of Florida's